everyone, who will then spread this love to those we do not know, to let them all know we are here and our love is for them and for all until there is a cure for HIV/AIDS. Now, with the power vested in Reno's biggest little sisters by the state of erotic bliss, self-love, and loving affirmation, I declare the gathered faithful overflowing with pride and joy and love, ready to spread this to the world. In the name of the Father, Daddy. In the name of the Son, Daddy's little boy. And in the name of our Holy Spirits, vodka, gin, rum, Southern Comfort, and my favorite, Michelob Ultra, we are, after all, very spiritual sisters. And in the name of our spiritual advisors, the worldwide order of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, Amen, women, and all the rest. Blessed be, blessed be, blessed be.
That is wonderful. Thank you very much. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a walk that's gonna go around the lake. Along the walk, you'll see bags set up that either have names on them of people who've been lost, or have information on them that we feel is important to share. And we will have stops along the way where we will get to listen to some amazing people who have agreed to share parts of their story with us today. So, the sisters, as usual, will lead our walk, and I hope that you guys learned something today. And thank you for coming. And we don't have candles right now. They're inside the bags because we didn't want to set any fires. Yes, you may. Just in your hands.
Do I really need this? No.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Probably better. Your voice is...
You do what you want.
Hello. I'd rather just talk loud. How's that? Anyway, I'm very pleased to be here today. I was diagnosed in Houston, Texas, in December of 1985, and almost 32 years, you get kind of numb about the whole thing. It was very interesting because I was at a very good age, having a lot of fun, going to bars every weekend, a wonderful social group, and I remember that I hung around with some pretty educated people, but we would sit around and talk about those poor guys in New York City dying of some dreadful disease they picked up from the Haitians in Miami on vacation. That's exactly what we thought was going on. And then it hit Houston. And it was around Christmas, and two of my friends said, let's go get tested. And I thought, I'm thinking, as promiscuous as they are, why in the world do they want to ruin their holiday and maybe get this dreadful disease? And it was the Montrose Clinic, and back then it was, it took 2 weeks to get your results. And there were a lot of people in there, a lot of guys in there. And so I dreaded the 2 weeks to get the results. I knew that I didn't have it because, you know, there's the Blessed Virgin Mary and then there's me. So, and my two friends were very promiscuous. So anyway, we go that night, and they both came back negative and I came back positive. And I'll remember the blood-curdling scream that I let out, and as I walked through the clinic, I'll never forget that everybody had just put their head down, just thinking, oh boy, another one. So of my social group in Houston, and lived in San Antonio prior to that, I was the first one diagnosed. Not to make a sad story, but I'm the only survivor out of the entire group in Houston, and only one of two in the entire group of San Antonio. So that was 34 deaths in 2 first cousins, and my best friend of 19 years I lived with. It was so incredible at the time that as you were losing your friends, your other good friends said, I don't want to hear your stuff, I'm losing my own friends. It was just incredible, the volume of people that were passing away every single week. The mass exodus out of Houston was just phenomenal. All the bars and the baths, everything shut down, and people just went away. So as the years progressed, it was a 10-year span of literally spending your day off from work, going to the hospital, visiting your friends. And then it subsided, and after that, several more. And then it finally just went away. And so I was in denial because I am burying the people that supported me. And my doctor saying, you need to go on medication, and I wouldn't do it. And I felt fine, and everything was going great for many years. And then in 1999, I moved to Reno, and I got sick. And so I thought for sure it had to be the change in jobs, the altitude, the whole 9 yards. Anyway, I ended up in St. Mary's, and I was given last rites, and I was told I had 3 months to live. But anyway, here I am. So you go through that, and you go through some guilt because you survived. And then all of a sudden you're around younger people that are telling you, I'm not worried about AIDS, it's not my generation, it happened to you, it happened to your friends, and it doesn't happen to us. And we all know that's not true. So one day you wake up and you realize you're in your 60s, you're all alone, and you're still alive. So it's kind of bittersweet. You're glad to be alive, and you're angry and upset that you feel like that much of your younger years you were robbed of them. But at the end of the day, it's okay. So I'm very glad to see that in 2017 people are still gathering to remember the people we've lost and to realize that it's not over, and that we do need to get a cure, and we do need to stick together and support those that maybe are HIV or have AIDS. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker has been in case management and helping people living with HIV for quite a while. 20 years? 27. I was way off. She's pretty amazing. She's seen a lot, and so she has some stories to tell us, and I know this is going to be tough, but we're all here for you. I love you, Tony.
I'm glad one of the sisters read off the paper. I'm going to read off the paper tonight, but this is difficult for me. I just want you to know it's not just a job. It's my life, and I like my family and friends. So here we go. First, I would like to thank all of you for attending this evening, and a huge thank you to Nick for organizing the Candlelight Memorial to remember all of our family, friends, acquaintances that we have lost to HIV. Not only does it affect the family, it affects all of us. During the 12 years that I've worked at Hope, the number of people we have lost to the battle with HIV have been countless. They were not just clients to me. They were like my family and friends. They all mattered. I miss them, and they will not be forgotten. On December 30th, 2005, my first year working at Hope, I lost a dear friend. Also, he was a client and patient of ours to HIV. He taught my son Ben how to skip rocks, and he taught me what life was like living with HIV and the challenges he faced. He was one of many that gave more to people he met than what he was given in life. I learned many things from him. Some of their deaths could have been prevented. HIV is no longer a death sentence with medications we now have. The stigma and the discrimination still remains, and so does the lack of education in our community. And we can all make a difference, and we can all make that change. not only the stigma, but also the loneliness those infected with HIV experience. I will always think of what Mother Teresa said: loneliness and the feeling of being unwanted is the most terrible poverty. And I truly believe her words are true. And I cannot tell you how many times I have sat at the hospital with patients that have nobody listed on their emergency contacts because of the stigma and the lack of education that still lives amongst all of us. Thank you again for joining us this evening.
I'm a little emotional, so I don't know if I'll probably get through this, but we can try.
It'll be fine.
I was diagnosed with HIV back in January. I decided to go in and get tested on a hunch. With no previous symptoms, those words, "you're positive," changed me. It's like my mind had shut down, unable to feel, react. I remember my case manager and doctor kept telling me, "You're handling this very well." But what I couldn't say was inside I'm chained, broken, and suffocating. And the guy I was before is gone. My battle has been regaining control of my life, finding the slightest happiness and hanging on for dear life, hoping it'll last so I don't have to think about this poison inside me that has attached itself to the darkest part of me. I find myself staring at the mirror longer, finding teeny flaws and enhancing them, picking up the smallest details, the slightest weight gain, the wrong haircut, or the reoccurring acne, all because I have this new flaw that I cannot fix. It constantly reminds me that I'm not good enough. No one would ever want to love someone who has HIV. Every time I look at a guy on the street or in the car next to me at a red light, I find myself doubting it'll ever happen. He'll never love me because having HIV isn't a gold star trait. So I let it grab me and drag me down. I've only told a few people until now of my diagnosis. I grew up Mormon back in Utah, and we never talked about this. I didn't really understand it until I myself became the victim of it. Most of my family doesn't know because being Mormon, every flaw is looked at under a microscope. My mom and stepdad are the only ones I've told, along with a couple of close friends. But I've had to deal with this on my own, the only way I can. My parents are back home and my friends have lives of their own. So I've learned to handle this, isolating myself, saying I'm tired, it's been a rough day, or I'm broke, I can't go out, as excuses, because this virus has suppressed me. It wasn't until months later I broke free from the restraints and went out to my first gay bar since all this. I was nervous, but excited to finally get out. But I was wrong. The place was packed and the walls started to close in. I felt every guy was staring at me, judging me. My breathing and heartbeat were overwhelmed as I kept thinking, no one here likes you. You're not good enough, and you have HIV. And I realized I was having a panic attack. And it scared me. It wasn't until I left and was alone and managed to calm myself down. I never knew that this would be such a struggle every day. But I know little by little, I'll overcome this. I'll fight through this. I'll survive this. My favorite quote has always summed up my life. The author is unknown, and it's the perfect ending to my speech. You never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. My name is Tyler Wood, and this is my HIV.
In 1981, I had just moved to Lake Tahoe from the Bay Area, and I was happy to be out on my own, to be able to do what I wanted to do. And I was reading in the Bay Area Reporter a story about this new gay something or other, they didn't know what it was, that it was affecting gay men in San Francisco and New York. My first reaction was, I'm glad I moved away from the Bay Area. And then, as time progressed, we knew that it was much more serious and people were dying. The first person, in Glamour, I think you agree with me on this, the first person in Reno, first or second person in Reno to pass away from AIDS was... I know. Anyway, it was in the early 80s. He was a strong, very active gay man, and he was the first one to pass away. Luckily, Mitch and I, my husband, we've been together since '81. Luckily, we both are negative. How that happened, growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, I don't know, but we are. Here in Reno, in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, people were just passing away right and left. The Silver Dollar Court lost like 6, 7, 8 monarchs, past monarchs in 1 year. It was devastating to the community. And the thought that I always have in my mind is, if those people, not only them, but if everyone was still around without this disease, you know, how much better the world would be. 2 little stories, and then I'll turn it back over to Nick. One of the founding members of Reno's Biggest Little Sisters, Sister I Drink a Lotta, Ida, she was reunited with her family and has moved to Montreal. And I think I'm the only one that keeps in contact with Ida. And Jean Laporte is also a past emperor of the Silver Dollar Court. But anyway, about a year and a half or so ago, one of his sisters, he has a sister in Downey, California, and a sister in Montreal, and one of them called me or sent me a text, and Jean was in a coma. He was waiting, they were waiting for him to die. And the reason they were waiting for him to die was because he was trying to self-medicate himself. He was trying to eat healthy, he wasn't taking any medication, and, you know, but he was still drinking a lot and smoking a lot. And he was in a coma waiting to die. He came out of it and got on the medication. Part of it was he didn't want his family to know that he was positive, but they found out, and then they actually knew ahead of time. Anyway, he got on the medication, and today, I sent him a picture this morning, or this afternoon, when I started painting, and I said, I thank you every time I paint, and then I sent him the beautiful aftermath of when I was when I was finished, and today he looks better than I've seen him in 20, 25 years. He looks great. Because he's taking care of himself. The other thing that, the last bit of my little story is on Facebook. There was a thing last week, and I told Nick about it wherever Nick went. And he hadn't seen, oh, there he is back there. He hadn't seen it yet, but I think it was United Healthcare had denied somebody PrEP because the guy that was trying to get the PrEP was, according to them, in their letter to him, he was involved in homosexual high-risk activity, which that's what PrEP is all about. And a couple days ago, yesterday or 2 days ago, they reversed their decision. They apologized to him. They are changing their policy. So activism does work. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Well, it was agreed to speak last moment. We had a cancellation, and thank you for sharing that because it's a very...
Thank you, Nick, and everyone here. Yes. First of all, I want to thank Nick, and I think we should all acknowledge him for putting this memorial together. So thank you so much, and for inviting all of us. I think most of us here, or maybe everyone here, has been touched by the disease of HIV and AIDS in some fashion. So I would just like everyone to show a show of hands if you had a very close friend or family member die from HIV or from AIDS. So that's a lot of us. So before I give our closing prayer, I wanted to tell a very brief story and draw your attention to the fact that HIV and AIDS affects people all over the world, not just in our own country and not just in our own city. My uncle was diagnosed with HIV/AIDS back in the late 1980s, and he was a diplomat. He traveled throughout the world. He was married, had 2 daughters, but he was closeted homosexual, and he ended up dying of AIDS in, I believe it was Los Angeles in 1990, on my birthday of all days. So for many years, the family secret was that. The story was that he died of leukemia, but he really did die from AIDS. So it's especially poignant and important for me to be here today, because I've never really actively honored his memory at a memorial dedicated to the victims of HIV and AIDS. So thank you again, Nick, for asking me to be here. This prayer, you can take it however you wish in your own way. We all have our own spirituality, the way we honor our loved ones, the way we honor our God in whatever fashion that is, whatever that may be. The sisters have their own way, and I appreciate that. I think we're all too far too separated in our beliefs, and we do need to come together. So doesn't matter to me whether you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Hindu, Baha'i. It doesn't matter at all. Let's just pray together and address, I think, the biggest issue of all, and that is fear. And I was thinking as we were walking along, we all are the victims of fear. We are fearful when we first engage in sexual activity. We're fearful that we may not be accepted for who we are, if we're homosexual or bisexual or transgender, ultimately. Maybe we've been abused and we're fearful of the stigma, the embarrassment, the humiliation. And then those of us who hopefully are not fearful enough to get tested go through that fear every time we wait, whether it's for 2 weeks or for 20 minutes, as to what the result of our tests will be. And then if we are diagnosed, we are fearful that we will be rejected, that we will not be loved, that we will not have purpose in our lives. And we've already heard stories tonight to that effect. And then those of us who may not be in harm's way are fearful that maybe someone we know or someone we love will take on the disease, and then perhaps there's additional fear that that person may not survive. So with all that fear, I think it's important for us to know that we have friends, brothers, sisters, loved ones, parents, grandparents, a support system, a community that's here for us one way or the other. And I want this prayer to reach to all of us so that we can assuage our fears. There's really a beautiful note on a prayer in the brachot of the Talmudic or classical Hebrew blessings. And it's like this. The Holy One seems to be far away, but nothing is nearer than God. Let a person pray in an undertone, and God will hear that person's prayer. It is as if one whispers one's thoughts in the ear of a friend. Can you have a God nearer than this? who is as near to people as the mouth to an ear. So let us pray. God of mercy and justice, heal us from the ravages of HIV and AIDS that deplete immunity and make your children vulnerable. Heal broken hearts and relieve the grief that pains spirits and minds and leaves many to wonder about the meaning of life. Heal the psychological pain of HIV and AIDS and the fear and hopelessness that can engulf and lead some to die even before the virus kills. Heal the social stigma and the discrimination that results in uncompassionate acts of isolation and failure to provide quality care and prevention. Heal the dishonesty and fear that exposes partners and spouses to HIV and AIDS infection and renders some powerless to protect themselves. Heal the poverty that exposes millions to HIV and AIDS. Heal the exploitative social structures that condemn many to poverty and expose them to infection. Heal the violence that spreads HIV and AIDS. Heal the ethnic and civil wars. Heal domestic violence and the rape of women and children. Heal us and help us all to be instruments of your healing. And let us also remember that it is not only those with HIV and AIDS who suffer the stigma of disease. Let us remember all our brothers and sisters who suffer from disease throughout the world, whatever it may be,